Okay, let's talk about aging. What's really going on inside our bodies as we get older? Well, in this explainer, we're diving deep into the tiny engines inside our cells because they might just hold some of the biggest secrets to how we age.
For centuries, people have been searching for the fountain of youth. But what if the answer isn't some magical spring? What if it's hiding inside every single one of our cells? We're talking about these little microscopic power plants, our mitochondria.
All right, so let's take a quick trip back to high school biology class. Remember the mitochondrion, the mighty powerhouse of the cell? Well, I promise you, the real story is way cooler and a lot more complex than what we learned back then.
So yeah, we all know them for their main gig, making ATP. That's the energy that literally powers every single thing you do. But they do so much more. They're like the cell's air traffic control. They manage burning fat for fuel, and they even trigger the cell's self-destruct sequence when something goes terribly wrong. I mean, they are absolutely vital. Okay, this is where the story gets really interesting. Think about this. Billions of years ago, one of our ancient single-celled ancestors actually swallowed a bacterium. But instead of digesting it, they made a deal. They formed an alliance. And that little bacterium, it eventually became the mitochondria we have today. And here's the kicker. It kept its own DNA.
And just look at the difference here. The DNA in our cell's nucleus, that's like a massive library. But mitochondrial DNA, or mtDNA, it's more like a tiny pamphlet. A really, really important pamphlet, but still. A mitochondria needs something like 1,000 different proteins to work, but its own DNA only codes for 13 of them. Just 13. That's a tiny, tiny fraction. So you gotta ask, where do the other 99% of those proteins come from? Well, they come from the nucleus. But this is not a one-way street. It's a constant conversation. The mitochondria are always sending signals back to the nucleus. And these aren't just little status updates. These signals are powerful enough to influence our main DNA, telling it which genes to turn on or off. It's a real partnership, a two-way street, right at the core of our cells. So when you see how important these things are, it's no wonder scientists started thinking, hey, what if their decline is one of the main reasons we age? The first big theory, which came out decades ago, pointed a finger at the messy side of making energy. And the idea was pretty simple, really. Think of mitochondria like a car engine. It burns fuel to create power, right? But it also creates exhaust. Well, for mitochondria, that exhaust is something called reactive oxygen species, or ROS. The theory was that this toxic exhaust just builds up over time, damaging our cells from the inside out. And that damage, that's what we call aging. It was a nice, clean story. The bad guys were the free radicals. But, science is rarely that simple. Researchers thought, okay, let's just mop up all this toxic exhaust with antioxidants. But when they tried it in animals, the results were meh, often pretty disappointing. It was a huge clue that maybe ROS weren't the simple villains everyone thought they were. And this is why mitochondrial dysfunction is called an antagonistic hallmark of aging. It's a double-edged sword. At really high levels, yeah, ROS are definitely bad news. They cause damage. But at low levels, they're actually beneficial. They act like a little warning signal, telling the cell, hey, ramp up your defenses. Get this, in some organisms like worms, a little bit of this stress can actually make them live longer. Wild, right?
Okay, so if the whole toxic exhaust theory isn't the full picture, then what is? Well, the focus has started to shift. Instead of blaming damage from the outside in, the new thinking is that the problem starts from the inside out. We're talking about simple mistakes, typos, building up in the mitochondria instruction manual itself.
Here's a good way to think about it. Imagine you make a photocopy, and then you make a copy of that copy, and then a copy of that one. Over and over. Each time, the quality gets a little worse, right? A little blurrier? Well, the new theory suggests that's basically what's happening to our mitochondrial DNA every time our cells divide. Tiny errors just creep in and build up, and eventually you've got a bunch of faulty instruction manuals. And this isn't just a guess. A really clever, groundbreaking experiment gave us some of the best proof yet that these DNA errors are a direct cause of aging, not just something that happens alongside it. So what they did was create this special mutator mouse. They engineered it with a faulty spell checker for its mitochondrial DNA, which basically guaranteed it would make more typos when copying its DNA. And the results were, wow, These mice aged super fast. We're talking gray hair, weaker bones, shorter lives, all the classic signs. But here is the absolute kicker, the game changer. Their levels of ROS, that toxic exhaust, were totally normal. That was the smoking gun. It showed that the DNA errors themselves were driving aging, not the free radicals.
Okay, so we've got these DNA errors piling up. But what does that mean for the bigger picture? Well, a third theory kind of zooms out. It suggests aging isn't just about a few typos here and there. It's about a full-blown energy crisis that happens when the entire network of mitochondria starts to break down. Basically, the idea is that as we get older, our cells just get sloppy. They're not as good at cleaning out the old, broken-down mitochondria. And maybe more importantly, they get worse at building brand new ones. It's like the quality control department goes on vacation and the whole system starts running on fumes.
So what's in charge of this whole operation? Think of it like a factory's chain of command. It all starts with this key molecule, NAD+. The problem is, our NAD+ levels naturally go down as we age. And with less NAD+, the factory manager, this protein called SIRT1, can't really do its job. And if the manager's not working, it can't flip the master switch, which is another protein called PGC1 alpha. That's the switch that tells the cell, hey, build more mitochondria. So when that whole supply chain gets disrupted, our cellular energy grid starts to flicker and fail. Okay, so understanding all these theories is fascinating, but it all boils down to one huge question, right? Can we actually do anything about it? Can we fix our cellular engines and slow this whole process down? And the answer is maybe. The research in this area is absolutely exploding. Some of the strategies are looking at supplements that boost NAD+ levels, basically trying to top off the fuel tank. But there are also things we can do ourselves. We know that things like endurance training and fasting can directly flip on that factory manager protein, SIRT1, and tell our bodies to get busy building new, better mitochondria. But look, boosting the system is one thing. The real holy grail, the sci-fi dream, would be to go in and actually fix those DNA typos at the source. For the longest time, that was just an impossible idea. But then, in 2020, science fiction became science fact. Researchers developed this incredible new gene editing tool called a mitochondrial base editor. Just picture it. It's like a tiny molecular surgeon that can go inside a mitochondrion, find one of those typos in the DNA, and just fix it, correct the letter. Now, we have to be clear, this is super early stuff, but the possibility? It opens up this mind-blowing new frontier for actually treating mitochondrial damage and getting at one of the root causes of aging. So I guess the big takeaway is that these tiny organelles, the ones we maybe glossed over in biology class, are way more important than we ever thought. They are absolutely central to our health, to how we age. It just goes to show you how the smallest things inside of us can have the biggest impact. And really, all this research is about more than just living longer. It's about health span, how many good, healthy, energetic years we can get. So as we keep unlocking the secrets of our cellular engines, it leaves us with a really powerful question to think about. Are we on the verge of not just adding years to life, but adding life to our years?